Chapter 6609. Why has this giant centipede appeared here? Xiaohe was a little confused. They had always thought that the desert world and the oceanic world were just places for them to train. Even though everything in those worlds was far too realistic and had caused them to have their suspicions, they had not taken it to heart. Could it be that the other demons have come from that realm as well? Hearing Xiaohe's question, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was also pondering over this question. The Chaos Ring. How is it related to all of this? The world was so vast, and there were so many realms. However, the Chaos Ring had allowed her to enter this realm. Could this be a coincidence? In a trance, a thought seemed to flash through her mind. However, it flashed through her mind too quickly, and she couldn't catch it at all. Without giving her time to think carefully, the centipede roared and swept its tail towards her. Boom! Its long tail swept across the ground, creating a terrifying sound. However, the ground seemed to be made of steel, and did not show any signs of damage under such power. Bailey Hongzhuang had already dodged the attack. Once the centipede noticed this, it quickly chased after her. With a long sword in hand, the woman's figure floated gracefully as she stabbed and slashed at the centipede's body, creating a sharp sound. However, she was unable to break through the centipede's defenses. Most importantly, she realized that this centipede's speed was much faster than the one she had encountered in the past. It was clearly a very large body, but its speed and agility had exceeded her expectations. Indeed, this dark environment is more suitable for its survival. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed, and a fierce look appeared in the space between her brows. This was a radiant sun-state centipede, and its powers were not ordinary. However, she was not afraid. Ding ding ding. The sound of metal clashing against metal rang out continuously. The centipede was extremely fast, so Bailey Hongzhuang decided not to dodge. She had crossed swords with this centipede many times before, so she knew its weakness very well. When the centipede saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was standing motionless on the spot, its eyes lit up with joy. Then it quickly charged towards her. Roar! An astonishing roar of a beast suddenly spread out, bringing with it extreme pain. It kept rolling in the cave, and a terrifying power kept sweeping out, scattering the stones. The momentum was astonishing. Bailey Hongzhuang's white robes fluttered in the wind. The sharp sword in her hand had already pierced into the centipede's eye. Seeing the giant centipede struggling, Bailey Hongzhuang quietly watched for a moment before flying out and pulling out the sword. At the same time, she gathered her elemental energy in the long sword, causing the tip of the sword to become even sharper. The strength in her hand increased abruptly, and with a sudden burst of strength, she directly cut open the outer shell of the skull. The centipede also felt the approaching danger and quickly struggled, wanting to throw Bailey Hongzhuang off its head. However, Bailey Hongzhuang stood very steadily. After cutting open the outer shell, her elemental energy surged as she ruthlessly stabbed the sharp sword in. Poochie! A dull sound rang, and the centipede's violent struggle stopped. Its body gradually fell to the ground, and the entire cave quietened down. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the demonic crystal of the centipede. The blood-red demonic crystal exuded a bewitching luster. She sensed it slightly, and found that the energy contained in it was much stronger than that of the centipede she had killed. Chapter 6610. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiaohe couldn't help but laugh. I reckon that Yin Che still likes to eat them. It's just that he's already in his human form. If he continues to eat these demon crystals in his current form, the scene would be a little out of place. The image of Yin Che eating demon crystals flashed across her mind. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. That's true. It's said that these demon crystals can be used to refine elixirs. After the competition is over, I'll go back and try to see if these demon crystals have any effect. Now that I think about it, I'm really envious. Back then, Xiaobai and I cultivated as if our lives depended on it. But in the end, our cultivation speed couldn't compare to Yin Che's, who was constantly eating demon crystals. Xiaohe shook her head and sighed. At that time, what they were most envious of was Yin Che's method of cultivation. Wasn't it very enviable that his strength could soar just by eating and eating? In fact, Gong Jun also used this method to increase his cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly smiled. But ordinary people don't have that much money to buy treasures to eat. After dealing with the giant centipede, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the identity card in her hand. As expected, this centipede gave them more points than the monsters they had killed for half a day. If it weren't for the fact that she was experienced in dealing with this kind of centipede, and knew where its weakness was, ordinary cultivators would probably have to spend a lot of effort on it. If we speed up and kill monsters here, then our points might really be very high. A glimmer of joy flashed through her pitch-black phoenix eyes. The reward for first place this time was extremely generous. Naturally, they had to give it a try. After resting for a moment, she continued to walk forward. The environment in the maze was very interesting. Only the monsters were relatively spacious. And when they headed to the next place, the path became very narrow. This path is really strange. It's clearly very large. So why is it so small? Xiaohei couldn't help but say, as she looked at the pitch-black darkness in front of her. It seems that this path was purposely made. Bailey Hongzhuang smirked. If the cultivator is no match for this monster, he can take the opportunity to run into this passage. With the monster's huge body, it would definitely not be able to barge in. What's more, this cave is very mysterious. No matter how shocking the shockwaves from the battle are, this rock doesn't move at all. It's not affected at all. If it was an ordinary cave, it would have collapsed after their battle just now. Because of this, she was even more certain that this place was specially set up by someone. When Bailey Hongzhuang was hunting demons, the others were almost in the same situation. However, the demons that everyone encountered were different, and there was a slight difference in strength. Unsurprisingly, these monsters were all at the Radiant Sun realm. The only difference was their strength. 3 days later, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the monster in front of her with a hint of surprise in her eyes. Isn't this the demonic beast that Master summoned? Xiaohei looked at the huge, sinister-looking demonic beast in front of her. Her eyes were filled with shock. I was wondering why I couldn't find out what species the demonic beast was. It's not from the immortal region, but from another plane. Chapter 66:11. The demon beasts in the desert world are demons, and the demon beasts I summoned are also demons. If there was an ocean here, would the demon beasts from the ocean world also appear here? Bailey Hongzhuang thought to herself. She had always thought that the desert world and the ocean world were not the same plane, but two completely different places. But now, could it be that this was the same place, but the environment was slightly different? As this thought surfaced, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that everything was not so simple. The demon beast she summoned also came from that plane. So the Chaos Ring was not the key to every world, but only to that plane? When she thought of this, she was even more certain that this might be the truth. Then, what is the relationship between the Chaos Ring and that plane? Now that the immortal region rejects everything that appears in that plane, treating it as an external enemy and desperately trying to get rid of it, then all of this, rich dark energy, could it be that that is a dark attribute world? Then why are they constantly appearing in the immortal region now? Countless thoughts appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind, but she could not answer all of these thoughts. Vaguely, it seemed like something was about to break through the ground, but in the end, only a bud was revealed and then disappeared. This feeling is just like in the upper realm. Dark attribute cultivators have always been rejected, but they kept working hard in order to have their own place of safety in this place. Bailey Hongzhuang muttered to herself. This situation was really quite similar. She felt that her understanding of the Chaos Ring was really too little. This ring was too miraculous. Ever since she had transmigrated, it had been helping her. And it was only now that she realized that all the functions she knew might be just a side function of the Chaos Ring. As for the real function, she might not understand it yet. Master, what's wrong? Xiaohei saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had suddenly stopped saying anything and was standing at the side in a daze, lost in thought, and could not help but ask. Hearing this voice, Bailey Hongzhuang came back to her senses, shook her head and said, "Nothing." Xiaohei did not think too deeply about it. She only said with concern, "This fellow's combat power is not simple. Master, you must not be in a daze. Otherwise you will easily get injured." Bailey Hongzhuang put aside the doubts in her heart and clenched the sharp sword in her hand. Her eyes suddenly sharpened, and she rushed toward the demon. Originally, she had always summoned it for her own use, but she had never really fought with it. She also wanted to know how strong this monster's combat power was. Roar! An earth-shattering roar rang out. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt a gust of wind whistling past, and her footsteps came to a halt. Bailey Hongzhuang paused for a moment, then rushed forward again, the sharp sword in her hand stabbing out rapidly. Ding! Rip! The long sword slashed across the monster's body, leaving a greenish-white mark, but it did not really hurt the monster. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. This guy's skin was stronger than the demons she had killed before. With just this thick layer of skin, it was already very difficult to injure it. Her sword had already contained sword intent, but it still could not break through. The monster looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with disdain, as if mocking her attack for not having any effect. Chapter 66:12. Bailey Hongzhuang took 2 steps back, and the power of darkness instantly surged outwards, following the shadows on the ground, and gradually attacking the demon. The demon was very smart as well. It keenly sensed that the power of darkness was in the shadows, and immediately increased its speed. In the blink of an eye, the demon had charged in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. It raised its large claws and slammed them down. Bailey Hongzhuang tumbled backwards. Just as the claws were about to crush her, the tip of her sword pointed upwards. Uffed! A soft sound rang out, followed by the furious roar of the demon. Ding! The demon forced the longsword back, and it fell back into Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. I never thought that this fellow's skin would be so rough and thick on the surface, but its palm would have no defense at all. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a cold smile as she remarked. Xiao He stood to one side and watched as the demon grew more and more powerful. However, it was not too worried. Its master's methods have never been simple. During this fight, it had clearly noticed that its master was using this fellow to practice her latest technique. Normally, it would not be easy to find an opponent. Now that she has this demon to practice on, it was undoubtedly the best opportunity. Hence, it was not in a hurry, and simply watched from the side. During this fight, Bailey Hongzhuang had discovered that these demons had a rather thorough understanding of the power of darkness. She could also learn a thing or two from this fight. Xiao He, are you sure you don't want to try? Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes darted around as she turned towards Xiao He. This fellow has always been lazy ever since it had arrived. It would refrain from fighting whenever it could. There's no need, master. You just have to train well. Xiao He waved her hand as her face was filled with smiles. You're really lazy. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. From before to now, this guy's habit of being lazy really hadn't changed at all. As she gradually gained a better understanding of this demon's characteristics, she gradually found its fatal weakness. She immediately moved, and the inner energy within her body instantly erupted. A great killing move was quietly formed. Boom! The monster was suddenly sent flying by Bailey Hongzhuang's attack. A large hole had already appeared in its vital part. It was obviously going to die soon. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly took out the demon crystal and placed it into her chaos ring. She then sat down at the side. After fighting for such a long time, she had exhausted a lot of energy. She needed to rest for a while to recover. While she was resting, she suddenly sensed the fluctuations of a battle in front of her. She could also vaguely hear the sounds of people talking. However, due to the distance, he couldn't hear it clearly. Master, there's someone ahead. Xiao He ran to the entrance of the cave and leaned against the wall to listen to the sounds on the other side. We've been here for a few days, but we haven't met a single person. Bailey Hongzhuang also had a hint of curiosity in her eyes. From the sound of it, it seems like the two of them are enemies. Even if they couldn't hear it clearly, they could still make some guesses from the speed of their conversation and the fluctuations of their battle. Master, could it be that they're not working together to fight against the demon? Would you talk so much when you're working together with your friends? Bailey Hongzhuang asked in return. Hearing this, Xiao He was stunned. She immediately understood. I understand. However, it's also possible that they're fighting over the demon crystal or points. Chapter 66:13. Anyone who killed a demon beast here would gain a lot of points. If someone happened to pass through the passageway and saw the other party about to defeat the demon beast, it wasn't impossible for them to take the opportunity to snatch the points. Bailey Hongzhuang quickened her pace as she led Xiaohei forward. She wondered if one of them would be among them. Not only was this place suitable for cultivators to raise their cultivation level, but it was also suitable for cultivators to earn points. Even if it was filled with danger, there would definitely be many cultivators who came here. As Bailey Hongzhuang approached, she realized that the situation was more exciting than she had imagined. It turned out that a cultivator was facing the siege of 3 cultivators. The demons here had already been killed, but the 3 cultivators were ruthlessly attacking the man. The besieged man was dressed in a light green robe. His figure was elegant, and his strength was extraordinary. He didn't immediately retreat under the siege of the 3. Instead, he was able to persist. It was obvious that his strength wasn't simple. However, as time passed, the man also showed signs of being suppressed. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the 3 people opposite her. The 3 of them weren't simple either. They were even stronger than Bai Liuchuan's subordinates. Under such circumstances, it wasn't easy for the man to still be able to do so. Master, from the looks of it, they seemed to be seeking revenge. Xiaohei sized up the situation in front of her. The 3 of them looked like they wanted to take the life of the light cyan-robed man. Furthermore, the viciousness they revealed wasn't the state of snatching points. That's right. They're seeking revenge, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile. In this demon-slaying competition, it was very normal for cultivators to die. It wasn't easy to take action normally, but here, they could attack without any scruples. It was undoubtedly the best. Then what should we do? Xiaohei was secretly speechless. The other party was in full swing. It didn't seem appropriate for them to just watch, right? Salad, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. The sudden appearance of a woman naturally attracted the attention of the 4 people who were fighting. Their expressions immediately became complicated. The 3 cultivators thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was on the side of the light green man. Fear and confusion appeared between their brows. The light cyan man was only worried that she was also one of them. Originally, he was already having a hard time dealing with the attacks of 3 people. If one more person joined in, he was afraid that he would really lose his life here today. In an instant, all 4 of their gazes landed on Bailey Hongzhuang, and the atmosphere became extremely strange. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang said, "I'm just passing by." As soon as she finished speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang took a step forward and slowly walked past the edge. She didn't know how long these people would fight for. She couldn't stay here and waste time because of these guys. Hearing the woman's words, the light cyan-robed man immediately heaved a sigh of relief. As long as the other party wasn't a match for them, then it was a good thing. The other 3 looked at Bailey Hongzhuang suspiciously. This person appeared out of nowhere, and was so calm in the face of such a situation. It was really too strange. If it was an ordinary person, they would definitely avoid this situation like the plague. However, she deliberately came here. There must be something wrong with this woman. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to enter the passage, a man's voice suddenly rang out. "Stop her." Chapter 66:14. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes as she stared at the 2 men who had blocked her way. A cold light flashed across her eyes. "I've said it before, I'm just passing by." However, the 2 men chuckled. "It doesn't matter if you're just passing by. Since you've seen what's happening today, consider yourself unlucky. You're really arbitrary. Are you trying to silence me?" Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a cold smile. As expected, one look, and she could tell that these guys were not good people. "That's right, we want to silence you. Who told you to be so unlucky?" The man was very calm. Their actions today were carried out in secret. It was because they knew that this person was here, that they had risked their lives to come here. As long as they could kill this person, they would have a meteoric rise in the future. However, there was a prerequisite to this, and that was that they could not be discovered by anyone. Although this woman looked unfamiliar, if she were to expose this matter, the consequences would be unimaginable. The light green man clearly didn't expect things to turn out like this. and he was a little surprised. I saw that the three of you couldn't take him down after so long. Now that I'm here, are you sure you can win? Bailey Hongzhuang's face rippled with a smile like a spring breeze, but her eyes were like 10,000 years of ice and snow. These guys never cared about other people's lives. Even if she wasn't here, as long as these guys found her at the next cave, they would definitely take her life. Because they could not let anyone find out about this. Thinking about this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at the light green man. For something like this to happen, it was obvious that this man's position was not simple. Although she originally wanted to kill Guan Yi and Yun Xiaoman quietly, to prevent the Wanbao Pavilion from coming back to cause trouble, she didn't care too much about this matter before it was carried out in secret. Although it would be troublesome, it wouldn't be to this extent. The three men in front of her were different. From their expressions, she could tell that this matter could not be spread. Presumably, when they made this decision, they must have thought about it for a long time. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, the three people's faces changed slightly. This was also what they were worried about. However, when they saw the woman's disdainful look, the anger in their hearts surged. This woman was actually looking down on them. Who do you think you are? How arrogant. The man snorted coldly. Let me get rid of you first. Let's see if you can still be so arrogant. You too, stop him. Don't let him escape. I'll deal with this woman first. The other two nodded. All right. In the next moment, the man threw a punch at Bailey Hongzhuang. He understood that any cultivator who appeared here would not be too weak. However, this place was not very far from the entrance. In addition, many people had come here to explore before. Perhaps this woman was lucky, and the monsters she passed through were not strong. Or perhaps, the monsters in front of him had been taken away by others. A mere woman, even if her strength wasn't bad, was definitely not a match for him. When the light green man saw this scene, he could not help but say, "The person you want to kill is me. It has nothing to do with her." Chapter 66:15. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed when she saw the man's attack. At the same time, she raised her hand to meet the attack. The man in light green wanted to help Bailey Hongzhuang when he heard the woman's calm voice. Let's deal with your side first. You should have no problems dealing with these two people. Hearing this, the man's eyes flashed with astonishment. Even at a time like this, the woman was not flustered at all. Her calm and indifferent demeanor did not show any signs of nervousness. Instead, it was as if she had seen through everything and exuded a sense of confidence from her very bones. Does she not know that none of these three people's powers are simple? I'm sorry for dragging you into this. The space between the man's brows carried a sense of guilt. Then a thick murderous light flashed in his eyes. He stared at the two people in front of him with murderous intent. Give me some time, I'll deal with them. Bailey Hongzhuang gently raised the corners of her lips. All right. When the three people saw that the two people before them had formed an alliance in the blink of an eye, the murderous intent in their eyes intensified. Wham! Bailey Hongzhuang and the man's palms collided. When they were about 20 centimeters away, the power in their palms exploded. Light and metal energy clashed, exploding into a dazzling light. However, at almost the instant they exchanged blows, the man's expression suddenly changed. Unlike his previous confidence, there was a hint of shock in his eyes. This was because he had clearly realized that this woman's powers were much more powerful than he had imagined. Thud, thud, thud. The man quickly retreated until his body touched the mountain wall before he stopped. You! What about me? Didn't you want to silence me? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a seductive smile. Her cold and distant face instantly turned enchanting like a blooming devil's snare, emitting a deadly charm. However, this mesmerizing smile was like the smile of death in the man's eyes. It sent a chill down his spine, and sent a chill down his spine. If he could turn back time, he would never have stopped this woman. Because this woman's powers were enough to crush his existence. At the same time, the light green man unleashed his full strength. Previously, when he was surrounded by three people, he had to be careful. At this moment, although there were still two people in front of him, the pressure was much less than before. He had implicated this young lady for no reason. If he did not deal with these two people as soon as possible, and caused the young lady to lose her life, he would not be able to absolve himself from the blame. Bang bang bang. The man's attacks were as fast as lightning, and each of his moves was like a thunderbolt. Terrifying power continued to erupt, which was completely different from the previous situation of suppression. It was only at this moment that the other two men realized that this was his true strength. Previously, he had been holding back, but when he truly erupted, it was actually so terrifying. Under such circumstances, they could not even pay attention to the battle at the side. This was because they realized that after the other party erupted, even if the two of them worked together, they were still being suppressed. Such a situation was truly unimaginable. The terrifying power of lightning exploded, and the entire cave seemed to have turned into a lightning lake. Bolts of lightning struck down continuously with terrifying might. The man seemed to have turned into a god of death at this moment. Even Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but raise her eyebrows at such an attack. This fellow was indeed a formidable opponent. Chapter 66:16. Knowing that the man wouldn't have a problem dealing with the two of them, Bailey Hongzhuang was completely relieved. Coincidentally, she felt that she didn't have enough points. Zhong Iluan's situation was still uncertain, and Bai Luchuan was already a problem. No matter what, she would never let Bai Luchuan become first place. Other than him, there was also Bai Qingli. This fellow was also an idiot. His cousin had been playing tricks behind his back, but he actually didn't know about it. Even though the three fellows in front of her had specially come to kill people, with their strength, they must have killed quite a number of demons along the way. If she could snatch their points, it would probably be pretty good. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's attacks became even more vicious. Every move was swift and fierce. Bang! When the man was sent flying by Bailey Hongzhuang again, Bailey Hongzhuang took advantage of him and grabbed his neck with one hand. The man's face stiffened. Feeling the force on his neck, his face turned pale and fearful. "You, don't mess around." Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. "What do you think counts as messing around? If you kill me, you will definitely pay the price." The man looked at the charming and enchanting face in front of him, but his heart was pounding. This woman was definitely not a kind person. She probably wouldn't show any mercy when she attacked. "I'll pay the price if I kill you?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. "Then wouldn't I have to kill you even more? Otherwise, if I let you escape, wouldn't I be in endless trouble in the future?" The man's expression stiffened. From the faint teasing look in the woman's eyes, he knew that this woman was teasing him. He quietly turned his gaze. He originally thought that if the other two could defeat each other, they would be able to spare some effort to save him. However, when he turned his gaze, he saw that the other two had been completely suppressed. From the looks of it, it was impossible to turn the tables. They were clearly just a little bit away from completing this mission and rising to the top. However, because of a single step, because of a variable, they had ended up in such an outcome. All of this was because of this woman. Just as the man was about to explode with rage, the woman's nonchalant voice sounded. "Give me your points." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She glanced at the identity card on the man's waist. As expected, his points were very good. Hearing this, the man really wanted to strangle the woman in front of him. "What? You're not willing?" The man snorted coldly. "Now that things have come to this, the outcome is set. No matter what happens, there won't be any changes. Why should I give you the points?" "That's not necessarily true." Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "The outcome hasn't been decided yet." As soon as these words came out, the man was slightly taken aback. Suddenly, a strange light appeared in his eyes. "So, you mean as long as I give you the points, you'll let me go?" The man looked at Bailey Hongzhuang expectantly. "As long as you agree, not to mention my points, even their points will be given to you." Now, he didn't want any information to be exposed. As long as he could complete this mission, the three of them could escape to a faraway place. If they were in another city, who would be able to implicate them in this matter? As long as they could get everything that they deserved, that would be enough. Chapter 66-17. You've been in this place for so long, yet you're still so naive. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her brows. If it were you, would you let go of someone who had threatened to kill you? The man was stunned. The excitement on his face quickly dissipated and was replaced by anger. So everything you said just now was just a joke? No. Bailey Hongzhuang stretched out her index finger and shook it. Her slender finger was like white tofu and water could be squeezed out of it at any time. You can choose a different way to die. The man sneered. There's no need. Don't blame me for not reminding you. I have many ways to torture people. If you have to suffer such torture before you die, it won't be an ordinary kind of misery. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head, a trace of sigh in her eyes. Pitiful, really pitiful. Trying to scare me? That won't work. The man stared coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. If you want to kill me, then kill me. I won't let you have your way. Since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, I'll fulfill your wish. Bailey Hongzhuang took out a pill and stuffed it into the man's mouth. With a little force from her right hand, the pill was swallowed uncontrollably. Even though he was already mentally prepared, the man's expression changed abruptly. He had thought that this woman was just saying it. After all, when faced with a person who was about to die, no one would be willing to waste a pill. But this woman didn't play by the rules at all. What did you feed me? I've always kept my word. Since you want to die in a different way, I'll naturally fulfill your wish. Bailey Hongzhuang released the man and slowly walked to the side. She looked over and saw that the man in light green was about to finish his battle. When the man saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had released him just like that, he was momentarily at a loss. This woman was just too strange. In the next moment, the man charged towards Bailey Hongzhuang again. Even if I'm going to die, I'll drag you down with me. Bailey Hongzhuang stood quietly on the spot. She watched as the man charged towards her, but didn't react. Bang! The man threw a punch at her. Bailey Hongzhuang casually waved her hand, and the wind from her palm sent the man flying. When he landed on the ground again, he spat out a mouthful of blood. It was clear that Bailey Hongzhuang's move was much weaker than before, but the injury it caused to him was the most serious. After a moment, the man realized that he had lost his cultivation. Without Yuan Qi, he was no different from an ordinary person. Bailey Hongzhuang's attack. On the other hand, the two people who were being pressured by the light cyan-clothed man also had ugly expressions when they noticed what had happened to this person. One wrong move, and the whole game was lost. In the current situation, it was absolutely impossible for them to kill him. The two of them looked at each other, and without any hesitation, they turned around and ran into the tunnel. The two of them together couldn't even deal with one person. Once that woman joined in, the two of them could only die here. The man in light green robes quickly followed after them when he saw what they were doing. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang prepared to walk to the other side. Master, are we leaving just like that? Xiaohe asked in shock. Chapter 66-18. That light cyan-robed man went to chase after the other two. I wonder if he'll be in danger? Don't worry, that man is very strong. It won't be a problem for him to deal with the two of them. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. Along the way, she had seen a few experts and understood that the cultivators of the immortal region were extraordinary. Bai Liuchuan's strength was not weak, and the cyan-robed man beside him was not simple either. Now that she saw another one, it was really a place full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. The immortal region of chaos was already like this. Who knew how terrifying the immortal region would be? When the man saw that Bailey Hongzhuang ignored him and left just like that, he couldn't help but feel anxious. You're leaving just like that? Bailey Hongzhuang turned her eyes. If I don't leave, should I stay here and chat with you? I'm willing to give you my points and all my cultivation resources. I wonder if you can let me live? The man's face was full of pleading. I didn't recognize Mount Tai before. Actually, there is no enmity between me and you. Let me live. I will definitely remember your kindness in the future. How about it? You're right. Bailey Hongzhuang stopped and turned to walk in the man's direction. The man was delighted. You are indeed a heroine. Your magnanimity is admirable. Bailey Hongzhuang took the storage ring from the man's hand and found that the man had taken the initiative to erase the imprint on the storage ring. With a quick glance, he found that this guy's family was indeed quite rich. After Bailey Hongzhuang accepted the storage ring and points, the man looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. Please give me the antidote. What antidote? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. The man was slightly stunned. Miss, you can't go back on your word. After you die, this storage ring will be mine. What kind of payment is that? Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and sighed. It seems that your brain was damaged just now. You. The man's eyes widened as he stared at Bailey Hongzhuang angrily. He had never thought that this woman would go back on her words, and even speak, as if it was a matter of course. A mouthful of blood spurted out uncontrollably, and the man immediately fell to the ground. It was as if he was breathing more than he was inhaling. Master, this move of yours is truly powerful. Xiaohei gave her a thumbs up. I don't think this guy was poisoned to death. Instead, he was angered to death by you. Unrighteousness leads to self-destruction. Everything has a cause and effect. This is what he brought upon himself. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was cold, and there was no trace of guilt in her eyes. This guy deserved it. However, right when they were about to leave, a deafening sound suddenly resounded. Bang! The sound of a huge explosion swept across the area. It was quite far away, but it sounded as if it had exploded right next to their ears. Bailey Hongzhuang turned towards the source of the sound. That should be the direction in which the man in light green had chased after the other two men. Master, what's going on? Xiaohei's face was filled with shock. Even if he had thrown explosives, the sound shouldn't have been so shocking. I'm afraid that something big has happened. Chapter 66-19. Master, even if that man is more powerful, he shouldn't have been able to unleash such a terrifying attack, right? Xiaohei's face was filled with confusion. Although it had felt that the man was not powerful enough, it did not think that he was more powerful than its master. However, when it heard the terrifying commotion and the continuous waves of air, it felt that if this man was able to unleash such an attack, he must be a first-rate God's chosen one. This attack shouldn't have been unleashed by him. Not him. Xiaohei was shocked. Could it be that someone else has gone after him? Just how hateful is this man that so many people want to kill him? Bailey Hongzhuang gently shook her head. If my guess is correct, the ones who had unleashed this attack should be the two people he was chasing. Xiaohei was even more confused when she said this. Master, did I hear wrongly? How could those two people be so powerful? If they were that powerful, they wouldn't have needed to run away. They had used this sure-kill attack because they had nowhere else to run. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were deep and profound. Haven't you used this sure-kill attack before? You just didn't succeed. Me. Xiaohei's face was filled with question marks as it fell into deep thought. After a moment, it suddenly understood. Its eyes focused and it exclaimed in shock. Those two. They couldn't have self-destructed, could they? Bailey Hongzhuang gently nodded. That should be the case. Damn. Xiaohei was shocked. Those two really went all out. They had actually chosen to self-destruct. They must have been forced to do it. Their powers were no match for that man. Their fate was already sealed. I just didn't think that they would choose to use this method. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was complicated. She did not know who that man in light green was. The three of them had clearly come with the intention of killing him, and had made such a choice in the end. Although many cultivators have died on a daily basis, those who chose to self-destruct were few and far between. Once they self-destructed, it meant that there was no turning back. Not even their bones would remain after they died, and they would be annihilated. The environment here is so unique, and those two fellows suddenly self-destructed. I wonder if that man in light green will survive. Xiaohei's eyes were filled with curiosity. She had thought that the outcome was already set. However, based on the current situation, they might have perished together. Let's go take a look and find out. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked forward. He was not very fast because of the terrifying aura of self-destruct. Even after a while, the aura of self-destruct. 2. If this guy is really dead, then he can only be considered unlucky to have met these two crazy guys. However, we can still take their storage rings. That can be considered a great harvest. Xiaohei's eyes lit up. They had only met by chance. Naturally, there was no friendship between them. If the other party died, the items would fall into someone else's hands sooner or later. She might as well let them take advantage of it. As Bailey Hongzhuang gradually approached, the smell of blood in the air grew thicker. One could almost imagine the frightening color of blood in the previous pit. Such a terrible situation. I'm afraid that person's fate is grim, Bailey Hongzhuang thought. Chapter 66-20. Young lady, save me. A bloody hand grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's ankle and left a bright red handprint on her white robes. Bailey Hongzhuang lowered her eyes and looked at the person before her. The passageway was very dark, and if one did not look carefully, one would not have noticed that someone was lying on the ground. Even though she could not see the man's face clearly with her naked eye, she could tell from his weak voice that this was the man in the light green robes. After the man had said that, his hands drooped down uncontrollably. He was clearly seriously injured and had fallen into a coma. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the man and sighed in her heart. This fellow is quite lucky to still be alive under such circumstances. He was not meant to die. Master, do you intend to save him? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. Since this person is not meant to die, why don't we save him? This person has an extraordinary status anyway. If we become his savior, he might be able to help us in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled, and a playful look appeared in the space between her brows. She was rather curious as to who this person was. Seeing that his master had made her decision, the child did not say anything else. Instead, he enlarged his body and carried the man to the front. The stench of blood in this place is simply too pungent. Let's hurry to the hole in front, Xiaohei said. Xiaohei only put the man down after they had found a relatively clean spot. As her vision returned, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that the man's injuries were extremely shocking. His skin was completely exposed, and there was not a single piece of unharmed flesh on his body. His entire body was drenched in blood, and it was a ghastly sight. Bailey Hongzhuang was secretly speechless. As a physician, she had seen countless people with serious injuries, but it was rare to see someone with such terrible injuries. Under such circumstances, he was still able to use all his strength to beg her to save his life. This person's will to live was extremely strong. Master, he's already in such a state. Can we still save him? Xiaohei's lips twitched when she saw the man's expression. It naturally had no objections to saving him, but looking at the man's appearance, it was obvious that he was hanging on to his last breath. It was afraid that even if it helped, it would be difficult for him to survive. Let's try our best. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes became more serious. Since she had made up her mind to save this person, she would definitely do her best. Ever since he came to the celestial realm, although he had learned many ways to save people from his master, most of the time he used poison. The number of times he saved people was really not many. Now that this man's injuries were so serious, it was a good opportunity for her to test if her medical skills had improved. Seeing this, Xiaohei nodded slightly and helped Bailey Hongzhuang. 3 days later, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiaohei were actually sitting at the side cultivating. It had to be said that these three fellows had an abundance of cultivation resources. Not only did they have the blood spirit stones that they usually needed for cultivation, but they could also find some heavenly treasures in their storage rings. Now that they could not split themselves to hunt demons for the time being, they might as well just stay here and cultivate quietly. They were of the dark attribute to begin with. In this environment that was filled with dark attribute energy, it was very suitable for them. The speed at which their strength improved was also much faster than usual. Chapter 66-21. It would be very difficult for anyone else to solve this problem. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not pose much of a problem. As a cultivator of the dual attributes of darkness and light, not only could she absorb the power of darkness around her, she could also use the power of light to hasten the man's recovery. The Saint Spirit Crystal had played its role. After all, The Saint Spirit crystal had been brought to the upper realm by the Saint of Light. Since it belonged to this plane, there was no need to elaborate further on its role. Under the dual effects of the Saint Spirit crystal and her medical skills, the man's life had been saved. However, the man's injuries were too severe. It would take some time for him to regain consciousness. It had not been easy to pull the man back from the gates of hell. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally could not just leave him here. Otherwise, he would die without a doubt if anyone else were to arrive. Water. A hoarse voice sounded faintly, carrying a sense of struggle and pain. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang stopped her cultivation state and handed the water to the man. The man slowly opened his eyes and saw a beautiful woman. His eyes were filled with confusion for a moment. After feeling the pain in his body, his memories from before came back, and he completely understood what had happened. "Thank you for saving me, Mississippi." The man joined his fists, and his eyes were filled with gratitude. However, his actions were a little too forceful and affected the wounds on his body, causing him to frown. "It's good that you're awake." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. "It seems that my medical skills have improved." The man then looked at his hands. His flesh, which had been badly mangled, had slowly healed. Although there were still some scars, it was an earth-shattering change compared to the past. Even though he had not been aware of his injuries in that dim environment, he had a rough idea based on the pain he had felt. He had thought that he would definitely die this time. However, he had vaguely heard the sound of footsteps and sensed a familiar aura. That was why he had cried out for help. However, even he did not think that this woman would really save him. After all, this young lady had acted so decisively just now. Clearly, she wasn't someone who liked to help others. The most important thing was this young lady's medical skills. Even he couldn't help but marvel at her skills. Even the most famous doctor in the city couldn't compare to her. For a moment she rejoiced. If she hadn't met this young lady, he definitely wouldn't have woken up one day. "Miss, your medical skills are truly exquisite. I truly admire you," the man said with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "Since you're awake, I'm relieved. You shouldn't stay here for too long. Once you've regained your mobility, you should leave." The man nodded. With his cultivation, it was not a problem for him to wander around here. But now that his injuries were so serious, although the recovery effect was very good, it would still take some time for him to recover to normal. It was obviously not appropriate for him to continue staying here. "Who are you? So many people are trying to kill you." Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. "Are you the City Lord's son by Qingli?" The man was slightly taken aback. He smiled and asked, "Why do you think so?" Chapter 66-22. For the past few years, he has always been number one. His family background is extraordinary, and his strength is high. There should be many people who hate him, so it's normal for him to be hunted down. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. If you are Manager Bai, then all of this can be explained. If not, then your identity should also be extraordinary. Why do you think so, miss? The man was curious. Why can't these people be sent by my enemies to kill me? Perhaps it has nothing to do with my identity. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. We have all come from the lower realms and have seen many such things. These people want to kill you even if they have to risk their lives. And they don't dare to leak this news. Obviously, they are afraid of revenge. On the other hand, this also proves that your enemy has given him a lot of benefits. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so desperate. The man listened to Bailey Hongzhuang's judgment and suddenly felt that what she said was very reasonable. You're right, but even I don't know who sent them. But the reason why Miss saved me, could it be that you think I'm by Qingli? The man suddenly asked with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. Although I think you might be this person, from my point of view, I hope you're not him. Why is that? The man was surprised. If I really am by Qingli, then you saved the City Lord's son. He definitely won't treat you unfairly. I don't want to think about this kind of thing. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. Seeing the man's confused look, she found it funny. I heard that Bai Qingli is obsessed with the way of the sword and doesn't understand human relationships. Even if I saved him, I'm afraid there's no friendship between us. Besides, I have a grudge with that guy. When these words came out, the man was even more surprised. I didn't expect Miss to offend the city lord's son. Then won't you be in trouble in this cloud city? Actually, I have some friendship with Bai Qingli. Why don't I help you make peace? Forget it, forget it. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. I think this guy won't be able to live for long. Why do you say that, miss? The man's expression changed slightly, and a trace of concern appeared on his face. Looks like your relationship with Bai Qingli is pretty good. You actually care about him so much. The man's lips curled into a smile. We're friends after all. Besides, he's always pursued the Tao of the sword. His heart is pure. I didn't hear him mention any conflicts with others at that time. He has been in closed-door cultivation all this while, and has not come out. May I know how Miss has offended him? As he spoke, the man recalled Bailey Hongzhuang's earlier words, and his expression changed. Miss, are you kidding me? Earlier, you clearly said that you've never seen Bai Qingli, so how can you say that you've offended her? Do you know Bai Luchuan? Of course I know. He's Bai Qingli's cousin. The two of them grew up together, and have a very good relationship. Bai Luchuan is my mortal enemy, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile. The man was slightly taken aback, and then he laughed involuntarily. Miss, you sure are indifferent. Even Bai Luchuan is a top figure in the city. You offended him, but you don't take it to heart? I've already offended him. Besides, he was the one who took the initiative to cause trouble. Do I have to hide? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Chapter 66-23. As far as I know, although Bai Qingli has an extremely good relationship with Bai Luchuan, he might not become your enemy just because of this relationship. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her phoenix-like eyes and looked at the man with an unfathomable gaze. She heard him continue. Bai Qingli rarely interacts with others, and Bai Luchuan's personality is the opposite. Therefore, he rarely asks about Bai Luchuan's matters. Perhaps. Bailey Hongzhuang stretched and said casually, I wonder what you mean when you said that Bai Qingli won't live for long. Since you are friends with him, I won't tell you this. In any case, even if I say it, you might not believe me. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. Clearly, she did not intend to continue this topic. Hearing this, although the man had some doubts, he did not continue to ask after a moment of silence. If you ask me, that Bai Qingli is a fool. Xiao He could not help but ridicule. His cousin is thinking about how to deal with him every day, and he actually treats him as a good brother. How laughable. Xiao He. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. What I said was the truth. Xiao He pouted. Anyway, Bai Qingli won't believe such words. He can't hear it, so it's not a big deal. After the man heard this, his expression suddenly changed. Miss, why would your contracted beast say such words? If you want to sow discord between the two of them from my point of view, I'm afraid he won't believe it at all. Young master, you're thinking too much. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. What does the relationship between the two of them have to do with me? This little beast of mine is just used to being straightforward. Just treat it as a joke, and don't take it to heart. Xiao He was unhappy when she heard the man's words. She immediately said, I don't care to sow discord. It's just that Bai Qingli is stupid. Although he has been first place in the demon-slaying competition all these years, the gap between him and Bai Luchuan is getting smaller and smaller. Do you know why? This person is the result of Bai Luchuan's diligent cultivation, the man said matter-of-factly. Haha. Xiao He couldn't help but laugh. Why are you so funny? Although we haven't seen Bai Qingli's strength, we know Bai Luchuan's level. If he was really strong enough, then he wouldn't need so many people to help him kill monsters and accumulate points. What did you say? He's looking for someone to help him kill monsters? The man couldn't help but widen his eyes, unable to conceal the astonishment on his face. Isn't that right? Previously, we were forcefully pulled in by his team to help him kill demons. Relying on their numbers, they thought they were extraordinary. Their attitude was much stronger than the city lord's son Bai Qingli. Why do you think he's trying so hard to snatch the first place? Could it be that you're like Bai Qingli, who's focused on cultivation, that your brain is fried, And you can't even understand such a simple question? Alright, Xiaohei. Bailey Hongzhuang carried Xiaohei over. This is their family matter. There's no need for us to worry. Why do we care so much? Chapter 66-24. Following Xiaohei's words, the man's expression instantly changed, revealing a sense of awkwardness and helplessness. I was too careless with my words earlier. I hope little beast won't hold it against me. Xiaohei glanced at the man, her expression looking much better. Alright, I, as a big beast, am magnanimous. I won't lower myself to your level. Cough cough. The man coughed dryly. This was probably the most indescribable demonic beast he had ever met. I've already treated your injuries. You only need to recuperate for a while, and you'll gradually recover. In about 2 days, you'll be able to walk again. Bailey Hongzhuang looked worriedly at the man. You must be careful when you leave. Don't run into any enemies or provoke anyone else. Otherwise, no one will be able to save you. Miss, are you planning to leave now? The man asked instinctively. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head gently. I'll wait until you've recovered your mobility before leaving. Otherwise, if any cultivators or demonic beasts appear, you'll definitely lose your life. Hearing this, the man sighed in relief, finally feeling at ease. Thank you, Mississippi. Since I've saved you, I won't let you lose your life just like that. Otherwise, wouldn't I have saved you for nothing? Seeing the playful smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, the man's mood could not help but improve. If I hadn't met you by chance, I really wouldn't have been able to keep my life. The man's eyes were sincere and sincere. He knew very well that Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance had saved his life twice. This person was simply the benefactor of his life. I don't know how to repay you, Mississippi. I have some cultivation resources here. Why don't I give them to you as a token of my sincerity? The man took out a Qianquan bag and handed it to Bailey Hongzhuang, his eyes full of sincerity. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. It's fate that we've met here this time. There's no need for this. If you don't accept it, I really can't rest easy. After this farewell, I don't know when we will meet again in the future. If I want to repay you, I'm afraid I will have to put in a lot of effort. Therefore, I want to give this to you first to express my gratitude. If we are able to meet again in the future, I will do my best to help you whenever you need me. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the man's serious expression and thought for a moment before nodding. Alright, I'll accept it. The smile on the man's lips became brighter. His face was pale due to his serious injuries, but he still looked handsome. Have a good rest first. You just woke up, so your body is not in good condition. Then I'll rest first. The man's face was slightly pale. It was already very difficult for him to say so much. Not only his body, but even his mind could no longer hold on. He took out a pill and popped it into his mouth. Then, he closed his eyes and began to cultivate. Bailey Hongzhuang did not say anything else and continued to cultivate. The next day, when the man opened his eyes again, he was in a much better state. Bailey Hongzhuang took out some food and handed it to the man. You're very weak now. Eat something first. Looking at the delicious food in front of him, the man was stunned. Then, an unconcealable look of astonishment appeared in his eyes. I didn't think that you would bring so much food with you when you came out for training. Chapter 66-25. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but recall the scene in the abandoned immortal forest when she saw the man's shocked expression. Her smile became gentler. That's because the elders in my family love to eat all kinds of snacks, so I'm used to bringing them with me. Although they aren't here now, it's a good habit. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the luck to eat them now. The man nodded slightly. It's all thanks to the elders. Xiaohei, come and eat too. Bailey Hongzhuang waved at Xiaohei. It was already waiting when Bailey Hongzhuang took out the food. When it heard Bailey Hongzhuang's call, it ran over immediately. As the man ate, he couldn't help but look at Xiaohei. Miss, what kind of beast is your contracted beast? It's so strange. I've seen many amazing hands, but I've never seen one like this. It's a rare contracted beast. It's called the White Light Spirit. I see. The world is big, and there are all kinds of strange things. I've learned something new today. The man sighed and said, Miss, according to my observation, your contracted beast seems to have broken through to the radiant sun stage. That's right. Why? Do you have any questions about me? Xiaohei turned to look at the man who was so interested in her and asked. Among cultivators, there are very few who can raise their contracted beasts to this level. Most of the amazing hands who come from the lower realms can't raise their strength to this level. You must have your own luck to be able to cultivate until now. However, there's something I'm curious about. What is it? Contract beasts that have cultivated to this level are usually able to transform into human form. I've seen some contract beasts that can transform into human form. Almost all of them face the world as human cultivators. Why are you still in beast form? The man's eyes were filled with doubt. He wasn't spouting nonsense. He knew a few contracted beasts and understood their thoughts. After all, in the chaotic immortal realm, living in human form was much easier than living in beast form. You really know how to rub salt into my wound. Xiaohei rolled her eyes. If I could transform into a human, I wouldn't be in this state right now. Why can't you transform into a human? Xiaohei is a special species. There are very few of them in this world. We don't know how it can take human form. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Previously, we also thought that it would be able to transform after its strength had broken through. However, after a year of cultivation, it still hasn't succeeded. I wonder if it will be able to transform, after breaking through, to the elementary immortal stage. Then I do have some understanding, the man said after some thought. As far as I know, there are indeed some demonic beasts in this world that find it difficult to transform into human form. However, it is not completely impossible. It only requires one thing. What is it? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. Currently, all of her contracted beasts had transformed into human form, except for Xiaohei and Xiaobai. Although these two fellows were usually carefree and rarely talked about this, as their master, she knew very well that these two fellows had always been looking forward to the day she could transform into human form. They also wanted to see how she would look like after she transformed into human form. Chapter 66-26. An illusory bead. The man said in a deep voice. An illusory bead? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Judging from the name, it has something to do with transforming into a human. The man nodded slightly. This illusory bead is a treasure to some demonic beasts that can't transform into a human. I only heard of it by chance. Do you know where I can find an illusory bead? I heard that the city lord of Qingyang City has an illusory bead. The man smiled faintly. Qingyang City? I've heard of this city before. It doesn't seem to be very far from Xi'an City. Bailey Hongzhuang searched through her memories. There were many cities in the realm of chaotic immortal. When she looked at the map earlier, she only looked at the cities that were relatively close. She had some recollection of the name Qingyang City. That's right. It's not far. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. However, this thing is in the hands of the city lord of Qingyang City. I'm afraid it'll be a little difficult to get the illusory bead from him. If it was an ordinary person, it would be easier. As long as she could provide a certain amount of things that the other party needed, there was a possibility of a successful exchange. Even if the other party was unwilling, they could try other methods. However, the other party was the city lord. He had a noble status and countless cultivation resources in his hands. Ordinary things wouldn't catch his eye. With her current wealth, she really didn't have any bargaining chips to exchange with the other party. There are no absolutes in this world. No matter what the situation is, we can always try. The man comforted her. If Miss needs it, I'll find a way to help Miss inquire after we return. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly surprised. She said, Thank you very much, young master. After hearing all this, Xiaohei couldn't help but feel a trace of anticipation. Hey, are you sure this illusory bead really has such an effect? You're not lying, right? Little beast, you're my saviors. If I were to lie to you about this, wouldn't I be too heartless? The man shook his head. However, when you go out, you can ask around for more information about this. Will there be a lot of people asking for the illusion form bead? Xiaohei couldn't help but ask. Actually, the use of this illusory form bead is rather special. It is extremely precious for monstrous beasts that are unable to transform. However, for other people, this illusory form bead is of no use. You know the situation in the realm of chaotic immortal. There are very few cultivators who can raise their contracted beasts to this level. Most people's contracted beasts can't cultivate to this level. Not to mention that most contracted beasts can directly transform. The man looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiaohei's expressions and understood their worries. With a few words, he eased the pressure. So you don't have to be too anxious. I believe it shouldn't be too difficult. Thank you, young master, for telling me this. Bailey Hongzhuang cupped his hands. This information was indeed very useful to them. The man smiled faintly. You're too polite. I've only told you what I know. It's nothing. Everything was as Bailey Hongzhuang had expected. 2 days later, the man had already regained his mobility. Although his injuries hadn't healed, it was already very rare for him to be able to walk. Chapter 66-27. Thank you, Mississippi. The man stood up and said after some thought. Miss, the reason why I was able to survive this time was all because of you. Now that I have yet to recover from my injuries, it's impossible for me to continue participating in this demon-slaying competition. Why don't I give all my points to you so that it won't be a disgrace? Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly taken aback. She didn't expect the man to make such a decision before leaving. I've also obtained quite a number of points these days. I originally wanted to make it into the top 10, but I didn't expect to give up on that thought because of this. Anyway, these points are useless. Miss, don't refuse. The man's face was full of smiles. He couldn't help but recall how Bailey Hongzhuang had asked the man for points. Even though they had only known each other for a few days, he felt that this woman was very interesting. When facing an enemy, she was completely infuriating. She wouldn't stop until she had squeezed out every last bit of benefit. However, when facing a friend, her attitude was completely different. This made him feel somewhat fortunate. At least the woman treated him as a friend. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang hesitated for a moment before handing the identity card to the man. Since you've already said so, it would be impolite for me to refuse. A bright and moving smile bloomed on her exquisite facial features. It was as if the sun was shining and hundreds of flowers were blooming. It was bright and beautiful. When he took Bailey Hongzhuang's identity card and realized that there were only numbers on it, the man couldn't help but be shocked. Miss, why is your identity card? That's why Bai Luchuan and I are enemies, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile. The man's eyes changed slightly. So, Bai Luchuan deliberately made it so that Miss couldn't get her identity card? Other than him, how many people can do it? The man didn't say a word as he transferred the points to the woman's identity card and handed it back. May I know Miss's name? If I find out more about the illusory form bead, I can inform Mississippi. I'm Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang. The man muttered. Good name. I haven't said my name until now. Actually, no need. Without waiting for the man to finish, Bailey Hongzhuang had already interrupted him. Since your identity is special, it's fine if it's not convenient for you to say it. We've met by chance, so we're friends. If we meet again in the future, it won't be too late for you to tell me your name. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and walked towards the other end of the tunnel with Xiaohei. Young master, please be careful on your way back. The man stood there in a daze until Bailey Hongzhuang's figure disappeared into the tunnel. Then he slowly came back to his senses. His eyes also changed into a complicated smile. What an interesting woman, but I don't know if what she said is true. After walking for a long distance, Xiaohei could not help but ask, Master, why didn't you hear his name? If we don't know his name, I'm afraid we won't be able to find him in the future. Why should we look for him? It's already good that he told us about the illusory form bead. As long as he gave us a direction, we can find out the rest ourselves. Besides, I already know who he is. Xiaohei nodded slightly when she heard the first part of the sentence. They really didn't need to look for this man. Besides, this man had not only given them cultivation resources but also points. He was already very kind. Chapter 66-28. Master, did you say that you already know who he is? Xiaohei was surprised. They didn't know many people in Xi'an City. The other party didn't state his identity, so how did Master know who he was? Looking at the dazed little guy beside her, Bailey Hongzhuang flicked its head with her index finger and said, "He's Bai Qingli." Ah, Xiaohei was stunned. Isn't he Bai Qingli's friend? You believe such words? Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. When I first met him, I wasn't very sure. After all, I've never seen him in person before. Furthermore, I don't know much about him. However, he's so powerful. He's training alone, and has enemies chasing after him. It does match his identity. So I probed and asked. If I wasn't sure before, then after seeing his reaction, I was sure. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. If he wasn't Bai Qingli, he wouldn't have paid so much attention to Bai Liuchuan's matter. After hearing everything you said, he wouldn't have thought that you were trying to sow discord. If he's really Bai Qingli's good friend, it's normal for him to stand up for him. Xiaohei was puzzled. If he's really a friend, he might be surprised, but he won't be angry or suspicious. His doubtful look clearly shows that he doesn't want to believe that a good brother he grew up with would treat him like this. So I let him hide it. At this time, if we expose him, it will seem like we're deliberately sabotaging him. Xiaohei came to a realization. Then this guy is really stupid. Everything is clearly the truth, but he actually thinks that we're lying to him? After all, we've been brothers for so many years. He's never thought about it in this way. It's normal for him to be unwilling to believe it. However, this time, we've also planted a seed of doubt in his heart. I think, with his ability, he should be able to investigate all of this very soon. This guy is so stupid. I don't think so. Xiaohei curled her lips. I still feel a little uncomfortable when I think about how this guy is Bai Qingli. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head with a faint smile. Actually, Bai Qingli is a smart person. Anyone who can be famous has their own methods. He just doesn't want to waste his energy on this. Based on my interaction with him, if this guy really focused his energy on other aspects, Bai Liuchuan would never be able to beat him. There were some people like this who only wanted to live a pure life, so they didn't want to be calculative about many things. Once they were calculative, it would be a bloody storm would be a storm, Master. Are you trying to kill him? Bai Liuchuan was Bai Liuchuan was Bai Liuchuan's was Bai Liuchuan she was Liuchuan? It just so happened that this guy had a huge family and business, and he had countless followers behind him. It was really troublesome to deal with him. Liuchuan have a Liuchuan. Perhaps. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were deep. Actually, it can also be said that I'm reminding him from the perspective of a friend. With such a cousin, it's only a matter of time before he cries. If he discovers it earlier, the outcome might be different. Chapter 66-29. If it weren't for this Bai Liuchuan, we wouldn't have wasted so much time. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the demon slaughter competition has passed. I don't know if our points are enough. Xiaohei couldn't help but sigh. In order to save Bai Qingli, they had been delayed here for several days. There was only a month of competition left in total, and there wasn't much time left. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. I reckon that this guy came straight here, as soon as he arrived at the Demon Slaughter Mountain Range. After staying here for so many days, I'm sure he has a lot of points. Let me take a look. She slowly raised the identity card. As she glanced at it, her gaze immediately changed. She couldn't help but take another look. Only when she was sure that she wasn't mistaken did she completely believe it. This guy's points are more than twice mine. No wonder he was able to take first place every year. This speed is very abnormal. Xiaohei was also delighted. This guy also knows how to make the best use of everything. He didn't waste these points. Master, we've made a lot of money this time. Even if they hadn't been delayed these few days, and were hunting monsters first, it was likely that their points wouldn't be more than this. In the cave, Bailey Hongzhuang, Bewitching, and everyone else were fighting monsters. Only by killing the monsters could they pass through this passage. However, everyone was determined to press forward. Once they were injured, they would temporarily return to the tunnel to recuperate. When their injuries had recovered a little, they would start fighting again. Every time a monster was killed, they would receive a considerable amount of points as a reward. Outside the Demon Slaughter mountain range. Look, that number's ranking has risen again. It's so strange. Could it be that this year's powerhouses don't use their own names, and instead use numbered identity cards? A few days ago, these numbers began to hover around the 10th place. Sometimes they would appear on the rankings, and sometimes they would be suppressed. Later, these numbers began to climb up bit by bit, and never disappeared. Especially that number 002. Originally, it was always 001, 003, or something like that on the leaderboard. But on that day, for some reason, this number 002's points suddenly skyrocketed, and directly jumped to first place. This is too shocking. Usually, the first place has always been by Qingli, but now it has been snatched away by someone else. This is really surprising. Everyone looked at the rankings and couldn't help but be surprised and exclaim in their hearts. This kind of scene was something that had never happened since the beginning of the monster slaughter competition. Now they really hoped that the demon slaying competition would end soon, so that they could see the true appearance of these cultivators with serial numbers. Bai Qingli actually withdrew from the monster slaughter competition. Bai Luchuan was extremely surprised when he heard the news. He had spent a lot of money to send people to kill him, but he hadn't expected this fellow to escape. What a pity. This news is already confirmed without a doubt. Bai Qingli did withdraw from the monster slaughter competition, and when she returned, she seemed to have suffered serious injuries, so she chose to withdraw. Bai Luchuan narrowed his eyes. Seriously injured? They actually didn't seize such a good opportunity. What a bunch of trash. Young Master Bai, now that Bai Qingli has withdrawn from the competition, no one will be able to surpass you in points. Chapter 6630. Go and investigate this matter for me. Since those three fellows have the ability to severely injure him, they shouldn't have let him live. Bai Luchuan narrowed his eyes. This time, he had given a death order. Bai Qingli's strength had increased too quickly in the past few years. It was too far away for him to catch up. However, in order to surpass him and become first place, he had sent out more and more subordinates. Most importantly, if this continued, this fellow would probably break through to the elementary immortal realm. Once this fellow successfully broke through, he would have no hope of surpassing him. Young Master, could it be that the three of them lost their lives after seriously injuring Bai Qingli with all their might? The man voiced his guess. Hearing that, Bai Luchuan frowned. That shouldn't be possible. I fought with Bai Qingli a while ago, so I have a good understanding of his strength. If the three of them join forces, their strength will definitely be able to suppress Bai Qingli. Otherwise, I wouldn't have sent them. Either something happened or Bai Qingli is deliberately hiding his strength in front of me. At the end of his sentence, Bai Luchuan's voice became abnormally solemn. If Bai Qingli had already discovered his actions, then things would really become troublesome. Young Master, Bai Qingli has always trusted you. You have never revealed any flaws. I believe that it's impossible for him to deliberately hide it. Bai Luchuan nodded slightly and felt more at ease. That's right. However, if something really happened, we have to investigate thoroughly. We can't let anyone find any clues. Yes, young Master. Master, I've calculated the time. It's only a few days until the end of the demon slaying competition. It's time for us to walk out of this maze. Xiao He carefully recalled the time after entering. Initially, she wasn't too worried. But after these days of wandering, she realized that the maze was ridiculously huge. Their speed along the way wasn't considered slow, but they still hadn't reached the exit. Staying here made it impossible to determine how far the exit was. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and subconsciously looked at her identity token. The points on it were much higher than when she first came. Although she didn't know what kind of name such a point would be, according to her judgment, her ranking shouldn't be too bad. Save me, save me. Suddenly, a scream came from the front. Hearing this voice, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Hei's expressions changed, and they quickly rushed over. This is Gong Jun's voice. Gong Jun's voice was very recognizable. It was already very difficult for this guy to make it this far in the maze, Now that he was asking for help, he must have encountered something that he could not solve. The man and the beast quickly rushed forward. After staying here for so long, they were already very accustomed to the dusky environment, and their speed had increased a lot compared to before. Gong Jun, what's wrong with you? At this time, another low and magnetic voice sounded, followed by Gong Jun's surprised voice. Boss, you've come. Thank the heavens, boss. Now that you're here, I feel much more at ease. When Bailey Hongzhuang heard the familiar voice, the corners of her lips couldn't help but rise. After walking in this labyrinth for so long, they finally met. Chapter 66-31. Madam, you're here too. Gong Jun turned his head in surprise. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, the smile on his face became even wider. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Your voice is so special. I could hear you crying for help from far away. What happened in the end? After Bewitching saw Bailey Hongzhuang, a trace of tenderness flashed across the depths of his eyes. The corners of his lips curled up into a faint smile, and his temperament suddenly became much gentler than before. Right in front, there's a demon with terrifying strength. I was discovered as soon as I appeared. That terrifying aura directly locked onto me, making it impossible for me to hide. I also tried my best to quickly turn around and run, and only then did I run here. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on Gong Jun's feet. Until now, this guy's feet were still trembling. It could be seen that he was really frightened just now. You were frightened by that demon to such an extent. Could it have reached the elementary immortal realm? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was complicated. She had some understanding of Gong Jun's character. Although this guy was usually startled, he was not someone who liked to exaggerate. If just its aura made Gong Jun feel so terrified, then this demon's strength was really shocking. I don't know either. Gong Jun's expression was somewhat complicated and awkward. I was forced by its aura as soon as I appeared. I didn't even look at it before running over. Fortunately, this tunnel was relatively narrow, and that big guy couldn't pass through at all. Otherwise, things would be troublesome. Boss, I think we should change our path from here? Gong Jun suggested. Bewitching thought for a moment. We've been going out along the original path. If we change our direction from here, it will be really difficult to get out. Why don't we go and see what kind of monster it is? Bailey Hongzhuang pondered. At the same time, she sent a message to Bewitching. Bewitching, you must have seen the demons here before. Some of them are actually the same species as the demons I summoned. I've noticed that as well. Bewitching nodded slightly. It's said that these monsters only appeared a few years ago. The Chaos Ring must have a lot to do with this plane. Do you think the Chaos Ring is something from this other plane? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and asked doubtfully. Bewitching muttered to himself. That's not impossible. It's just that most of the monsters in this plane are of the dark attribute, and almost none of them are of the light attribute. The primordial Chaos Ring has recognized you as its master. But this attribute, isn't it a little strange? It's indeed a little strange. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were deep and serene. This was also a question she had never understood. If that was really the case, then the Chaos Ring should have chosen any cultivator of the dark attribute to be its master, and not her. But the palace in the Chaos Ring is originally black and white. I didn't quite understand it at first, but now I suddenly understand. Perhaps the master the Chaos Ring is looking for has the dark and light attributes. If there's a chance, I really want to go to this plane to take a look. Maybe I can solve the mystery of the Chaos Ring. Chapter 66-32. When Gong Jun saw Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang looking at each other without saying anything, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. I say, boss madam, even if we haven't seen each other for a while, you don't have to be so lovey-dovey in front of me, right? How am I supposed to live like this? Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't continue this topic. In short, after coming to the upper realm, they discovered the strange mystery of the Chaos Ring. There was something fishy about it, but they didn't know when they would be able to solve it. Gong Jun, according to the mark in your book, how far are we from leaving this maze? Gong Jun frowned and said, Boss, look. I also feel that the monster slaughtering competition is about to end. If we don't leave now, I'm afraid it will be too late. I found that the fastest way to leave is to the left of the path I took, so I came here. Bewitching looked at the map in the book, and his eyes lit up. According to the contents of this book, as long as we can defeat the monster inside, we can directly leave the maze. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be surprised. Really? Could it be that this monster is the strongest existence in this maze? Although this kind of situation happened relatively rarely, it did indeed exist. Whenever such a situation occurred, the monster blocking them would definitely be the strongest one. In this way, everything that Gong Jun described made sense. It seems that if we want to leave now, this is the only way. Bewitching raised his eyebrows slightly, and a trace of seriousness appeared on his handsome face. Speaking of which, it's strange. Looking at it carefully, I found that the path that Bewitching took was actually so complicated. It was a circle. Bailey Hongzhuang compared the path that she took. Back then, she only felt that every path was the same, but now that she carefully compared it, the path that Bewitching took was really complicated. In comparison, the path that Yin Che and the others took was more suitable. According to the time, they should not be far from the exit. As for her, she had delayed a lot of time because she was treating Bai Qingli, so she only came here now. Indeed, Bewitching's brows were filled with surprise. I didn't notice this before. Boss, why don't we go over and take a look? Gong Jun suggested. We still have to go out and find Zhong Iluan first. That guy hasn't given us his points yet. Seeing that Gong Jun was most concerned about points at this time, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. As expected, you don't wake up early without benefits. We spent so much effort to succeed. How can it be gone just like that? Gong Jun had a serious expression. Let's not talk about anything else. In any case, we definitely can't let Bai Luchuan get what he wants. As for that Bai Qingli, I'm afraid we won't be able to stop her. However, with Boss and Madam's strength and Zhong Iluan's points, we might still be able to defeat Bai Qingli. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Don't worry, Bai Qingli has already withdrawn from this demon-slaying competition. Hearing that, Bewitching and Gong Jun were somewhat surprised. Is what you said true? I met him earlier. He should have been chased by someone sent by Bai Luchuan. If I hadn't appeared, he would have died. Chapter 66-33. The enemy of an enemy is a friend. Bai Luchuan has gone to great lengths to kill him. If he really dies, wouldn't Bai Luchuan's wish be fulfilled? Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix-like eyes pricked up slightly. She believed that as long as Bai Qingli wasn't a fool, she would definitely spend some effort to investigate the matter after returning. When the time came, Bai Luchuan would have such a formidable opponent, and would likely have a headache. Gong Jun's eyes gradually lit up. Madam, you are right. Although Bai Luchuan's status in the city is extraordinary, he can't be compared to Bai Qingli. Once Bai Qingli targets him, he probably won't be able to care about us. When the time comes, we will take action. Hee. Profiteer, profiteer. Xiao He and Xiao Bai said in unison. Gong Jun glared at the two rascals. What's wrong with being a profiteer? All right, let's head over and take a look. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and smiled faintly. It would probably take quite a bit of time to take another path. Why not try and see if they could defeat the demon together? On the other hand, if the demon was that strong, it would likely have a lot of points. Bewitching nodded, and took the lead to walk forward. Bailey Hongzhuang followed closely behind. Gong Jun walked at the back, unable to hide his nervousness. As the distance got closer and closer, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt a powerful aura. This aura was stronger than anyone they had seen before. However, it was naturally incomparable to Granny Hua and company. This demon is definitely an extremely powerful existence in the Radiant Sun realm. Even if we join forces, it won't be easy to deal with it. Bewitching's face was dignified. Along the way, the strength of the monsters in the labyrinth was much more tyrannical than outside. But this kind of strength, they had never encountered an opponent like this before. Upon hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This fellow is indeed not easy to deal with. Only when they got close to the entrance of the cave did they see the monster's appearance clearly. This was a monster related to the tiger clan. Its body was huge, and its form was very similar to a tiger. The difference was that its body was black and red, and it had 2 heads. There was also a pair of huge wings on its back. The 2 heads seemed to have different souls and had different expressions. The moment it noticed the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, its gaze suddenly became ferocious. Roar! 2 loud and clear roars spread out with terrifying sound waves, revealing their cold and sharp fangs. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others only felt a gust of wind blow past them. Their ears were filled with that terrifying sound, and even their eardrums were shaken. He subconsciously used his elemental energy to cover his ears. This terrifying sound wave was no different from an attack. These monsters all look very unique. Xiao He sized up the majestic big guy in front of it. Although it had 2 heads, in all fairness, this guy really had an imposing aura, and was extraordinarily mighty. In fact, although the demons they had seen before also looked very scary, they all had a ferocious characteristic, which was completely different from these cute-looking ones. They couldn't be said to be ugly, but they looked more ferocious. It's indeed a completely different style. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. In comparison, that plane should be a completely different scene. No matter whether the colors were gorgeous or deep, they all had different kinds of beauty. Chapter 66-34. As long as we kill this demon, we'll be able to leave this place successfully. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. At this point they could only try their best. Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other in tacit understanding. In the next moment, the 2 of them walked in directly. When the demon saw the 2 of them appear, the anger in its eyes intensified. These 2 fellows were really digging their own graves. They actually dared to take the initiative to charge at it. In the next moment, the demon raised its claws and directly attacked Bewitching. The huge claws immediately set off a demonic wind. Bewitching's aura was instantly locked on, and he could only feel a terrifying pressure pressing down on him. If he was crushed by this fellow's foot, he would definitely be turned into a pile of meat paste. Bewitching's brows furrowed. The origin energy in his body surged out violently, and he immediately broke free from the aura lock. His figure flew out, and after dodging, he leaped into the air and attacked the demon with his sword. Bang! The biting cold sword aura lingered around the dark energy. It was like a black sharp blade, and it slashed down violently with a violent air wave. When the demon saw this scene, it let out another huge roar. A terrifying air wave, filled with dark energy, rushed out at the same time. The 2 air waves met in mid-air, and in that instant, the earth shook and the mountains shook. The black sharp sword was completely defeated in the blink of an eye. Bewitching also took a few steps back. One of his feet stepped on a high rock, and his handsome face was extremely serious. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang also swung her sword. The dazzling light energy flashed out, and with a terrifying force, it attacked the demon's back fiercely. The demon flapped its wings and flew directly into the air. When it looked at Bailey Hongzhuang again, the murderous intent in its eyes was even more intense. Roar! The shocking roar was like a hurricane. Immediately, the sand and stones around Bailey Hongzhuang were blown away, and it was difficult for her to open her eyes. A terrifying gust of wind and waves surged over, ruthlessly crushing over. Hongzhuang, be careful! Bewitching's expression froze. At the same time, he rushed out and stabbed the monster's back with his sword. Poochie! The monster suddenly felt a sharp pain in its back, and blood immediately sprayed out from its wound. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure suddenly moved forward. She knelt on the ground and slid past the monster's body. She raised the sharp sword in her hand and charged forward. Rip! The sound of the monster's stomach being ripped open rang out, and a bloody gash appeared on the monster's stomach. The moment Gong Jun saw Bailey Hongzhuang display the power of light, his expression changed. Shock, suspicion, and disbelief appeared in his deep black eyes. However, in the blink of an eye, he had already regained his original expression. It was so fast that it was as if he had never appeared before. With 2 wounds in a row, the demonic beast became even more irritable. Its eyes turned blood red, and its aura was incomparably shocking. Bailey Hongzhuang saw that although a long bloody gash had appeared on the demonic beast's stomach, it was not seriously injured. A trace of disappointment appeared in her eyes. Earlier on, it was indeed an excellent opportunity. However, she did not expect this fellow's stomach to have such a shocking defensive power. In comparison, Bewitching's attack on its back was more serious. "Boss madam, you're really amazing." Gong Jun was pleasantly surprised. "I thought that this fellow was really too difficult to deal with. I didn't expect that you'd be able to injure it with your combined attacks. It seems that there's hope for us to get out of here." However, Bewitching shook his head, and his expression became even more solemn. Chapter 66-35. Upon hearing Bewitching's words, Gong Jun's face fell. However, he quickly regained his spirits. "Boss, let's help together. We must kill this fellow." Gong Jun picked up his weapon. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also enlarged their bodies and surrounded the demon. The demon's piercingly cold gaze swept across everyone. However, it paused briefly on Gong Jun. After being injured, the demon became even more irritable. The murderous aura in its eyes became even sharper. Its body flew, and it spread its wings and leaped into the air. A huge shadow covered Bewitching as it viciously slammed its claws down. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others all attacked the monster together, only to see a terrible black energy ripple burst out. And under that unparalleled power, their bodies were directly shaken and sent flying. Bang! 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 Everyone fell to the ground. The huge power felt as if they had crashed into a mountain. Their internal organs felt as if they had been displaced. Bewitching also felt a numbing power coming towards him. Raging primary energy surged out from his palms and met the claw head-on. The dark energy formed a circular barrier in the air, blocking the demon's claw. Its claw paused for a moment. Then with a snort it suddenly increased its strength. The power exploded once again, and quickly destroyed the black barrier. Boom! Once the barrier was broken, Bewitching's body was sent flying. Uffed! A mouthful of sweet blood was spat out. His handsome face was stained with a hint of paleness. However, he only saw the demon charging towards him again. Its blood-red eyes were filled with murderous aura. As long as its claw came down, he would definitely lose his life. "Beichen!" Bailey Hongzhuang quickly stood up. She transformed into a white light and charged forward. She then stabbed her sword fiercely at the demon. Just as the monster's foot was about to land, it sensed the airwave behind it and quickly turned around. It flew into the air and changed direction. At the same time, it raised its claws and the airwave attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. Bang! The fierce sword chi collided with the chi wave. The demonic beast's strength was undoubtedly stronger. Bailey Hongzhuang was also sent flying, once again hitting a rock. Upon seeing this, Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Gong Jun also rushed forward. 3 attacks came from different directions. A trace of disdain flashed in the monster's eyes. Its body shook, and a dark wave of air swept out like a black curtain, blocking the 3 attacks. Damn it! How can this monster be so strong? Xiao Hei's vision turned black. This terrifying power had severely injured it with just 1 strike. Earlier, this fellow must have underestimated his opponent and did not display his true strength. Now that it has been injured, its bloodthirst has been aroused. Its attacks are even more ruthless. Gong Jun clutched his chest and said with an ugly expression. Bewitching rushed to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His eyes were full of heartache. "How are you?" Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "I'm fine. This fellow is not easy to deal with. It'll be a fierce battle." Bewitching's expression was solemn. After just 1 round of battle, the gap between the 2 of them had been revealed. This monster must be very close to breaking through to the elementary immortal stage. Coupled with its terrifying defense, it would be very difficult to kill it. "No matter what, let's give it our all." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. Her blood chi field and murderous chi field instantly exploded. Her aura was much stronger than before. Chapter 66-36. The Radiant Sun stage seemed to be only 1 stage away from the elementary immortal stage. but it was too difficult for cultivators to cross. This was a stage where one's origin energy was constantly accumulating, but no one knew when one would be able to break through. Hence, the Radiant Sun stage was not divided into levels, and there was only one stage. Once one broke through, it would be a different world. If one could not break through, one could not be called an immortal. Although the monster in front of them was at the Radiant Sun stage, according to their judgment, this fellow must have been cultivating at this stage for a long time. The gap between them was not small. Bewitching nodded slightly, and his blood aura and murderous aura spread out at the same time. When the monster noticed the increase in Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiaobai's aura, a hint of surprise appeared in its eyes. However, this did not make it afraid. It only felt that these two fellows were even more annoying. Roar! The monster roared and charged forward again. It wanted to cripple these two fellows. The two of them also charged forward again, with great tacit understanding. The sharp sword and the giant claw collided, and 3 streams of air collided in midair. When Xiao He and Xiaobai saw this, they attacked the monsters back fiercely. Gong Jun took the opportunity to stab forward with his sword. After the monster sensed several auras, it became impatient. A huge amount of energy exploded, and Xiao He, Xiaobai, and Gong Jun were sent flying. As for Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching, they forcefully used their origin energy to block the monster's claw. This fellow's origin energy was so huge that it was almost stronger than the two of them combined. At this moment, they also deeply understood the situation that Granny Hua had mentioned earlier. The Radiant Sun stage was the stage where cultivators stayed for the longest time. This fellow's origin energy was already so terrifying that it could not break through. Then, how long would it take for them to break through? Just thinking about it was enough to know. Boom! A huge energy ripple exploded, and the two of them retreated several steps. However, the monster also retreated 2 steps under the influence of the energy. When it looked at the two of them again, there was a hint of seriousness in the monster's eyes. It did not expect these two fellows to be able to block its all-out attack when they worked together. After truly understanding the difference in strength between the two sides, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood that it would be very difficult for them to defeat this monster in a head-on confrontation. In the next moment, a surge of elemental energy erupted from her body. All the elemental energy swept out at this moment, and a dense dark energy surrounded her body. They clearly noticed that their master's eyes had turned as black as ink. As well, Bewitching also displayed the same trick, and his aura suddenly became cold and murderous. Why haven't I seen it before? Xiao He looked at the scene in front of her in shock. Although she did not understand what kind of move it was, she could feel that the power of this move was extremely shocking. It was far more powerful than any of the previous moves. Xiaobai's eyes flashed with a hint of doubt. However, it quickly understood. Is this the inheritance of the Bitter Sea's abyss? Chapter 66-37. Gong Jun listened to Xiao He and Xiaobai from the side, and a trace of doubt flashed between his brows. What kind of move are you talking about? We're not sure either. We only know that Master has obtained the inheritance of the Bitter Sea Abyss, but we've never seen it before. Thinking about it, this move should be quite powerful. The two beasts were very confident about this point, because the inheritance of the 3 Great Abyss had never disappointed them before. They thought that this time, it would not disappoint them either. Gong Jun quietly watched Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's changing aura. A trace of understanding quietly flashed in his eyes, and there was even a trace of amazement. After Bailey Hongzhuang set up the barrier, she only felt that the dark energy in the entire area could be controlled by her at will. She raised her right hand and waved it out casually. A huge dark energy ball attacked the monster. After the monster sensed the changes in the surrounding situation, it also became hesitant and uneasy. The dark energy in its body also became restless. This feeling was as if there was an invisible net binding it. Even using its power felt a little awkward. Raising both hands slightly, Bailey Hongzhuang blasted out a palm, and energy poured out continuously. Bewitching stretched out his palm, and a huge palm formed by dark energy attacked first. The monster roared and swung its claws. This time, although it was able to block the power, it was clearly much more difficult than before. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes, and a trace of joy appeared between her brows. Sure enough, once this barrier was set up, their strength increased a lot. Seeing this, the two of them did not stop moving, and their moves became even more violent. Although the effect of the barrier was obvious, the consumption of primary energy was also very terrifying. If they could not get rid of this guy in a short period of time, once they ran out of energy, only death would await them. Tyrannical energy fluctuations continued to explode. Gong Jun, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai could no longer intervene in this situation, because both sides were very strong, and if they rashly attacked, they might directly break into their barrier. Gong Jun stared at the scene in front of him in a daze, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. Boss, could it be that they are using a barrier? Upon hearing this familiar phrase, Xiao He could not help but ask, Profiteer, you actually know about barriers? Gong Jun glanced at Xiao He, and ignored the way she addressed him. Although I'm not strong, I'm quite knowledgeable. I've heard a lot of things from others. It's said that this barrier can only be comprehended by cultivators who have broken through to the elementary immortal stage. That's not all. As far as I know, even cultivators who have broken through the elementary celestial stage are rarely able to grasp it. Most cultivators can't even touch this threshold. But boss and madam were only at the radiant sun realm. How could they possibly comprehend a barrier? Logically speaking, this is simply impossible. Seeing Gong Jun's stunned expression, Xiao Bai also had a smug look on her face. Master and madam are first-rate geniuses. Naturally, their comprehension ability is not something that ordinary people can compare to. If this was seen by others, I'm afraid they would not even dare to believe it. Chapter 66-38. Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at each other. Their masters always thought that they were noisy, but now it seemed that Gong Jun was the one who was noisy. Don't be happy too early. I can see that this big guy's strength is extraordinary. I'm afraid it won't be that easy to deal with it. Xiao Bai's expression was solemn. It had been by its master's side every day, so its eyesight was much better than before. Even though their two masters' combat strength had greatly increased after casting the barrier, they did not know what kind of tricks this guy had up its sleeves. Since the monster from that plane could appear here, it was impossible to say that it did not have any powerful tricks up its sleeves. Bang bang bang. Energy kept pouring out, and more wounds appeared on the monster's body. It attacked Bailey Hongzhuang with all its might. It was clearly not very far away, but the mountains formed by the dark energy blocked its path, stopping it in its tracks. After noticing that the monster's condition was gradually worsening, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching tacitly launched a fatal attack. Turbulent dark energy condensed in their hands, and like a storm, they attacked the monster in the middle at the same time. In an instant, Gong Jun, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai felt that the entire cave was about to collapse. The terrifying shockwave caused their bodies to sway outside. Roar! The monster suddenly roared. But this roar was much more terrifying than its previous roars. The formless sound wave swept out, and its body suddenly flew into the sky. Then the same black energy wrapped around it like a huge black ball. In the next moment, its wings suddenly opened, and a terrifying black energy suddenly exploded with it as the center. Everything before them was pitch black. The terrifying storm sent Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching flying, and their bodies fell heavily to the ground like kites with their strings cut. Uffed. Bailey Hongzhuang spat out a mouthful of blood. Her eyes closed weakly, and her consciousness was in a blur. It wasn't until the moment before she fainted that she finally understood that this was the self-detonation of a demon. The terrifying energy swept across the surroundings. Even Xiao He and Xiao Bai were sent flying by the terrifying storm. They crashed into the rocks and lost consciousness. Bewitching's situation was no better than Bailey Hongzhuang's. They were in the center of the energy storm and could not avoid it. However, after the entire cave regained its silence, Gong Jun slowly walked to Bewitching's side. His fleshy face no longer had its usual naivety. His eyes, which were always full of astuteness and laughter, were now serious and dignified. His temperament seemed to have undergone a huge change in an instant. He flipped his hands, and a strange seal quietly appeared. His right hand reached out to Bewitching's head. Gradually, his eyes were filled with unconcealable excitement. At this moment, another figure appeared next to Gong Jun. He slowly said, "There's no doubt about it." After hearing this, the man's face was filled with excitement. "That's great. Then shouldn't we bring Master back now?" "No." Gong Jun shook his head. His expression was solemn and serious. "We've only broken the first seal. It's not time to go back yet." "But." "No buts." Gong Jun's voice was filled with endless dignity, and there was no room for doubt. Chapter 6639. Young Master Gong, this woman. Let's kill her. The man's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, and a vicious glint flashed across his eyes. In the next moment, his hand directly attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. Just then, Gong Jun's voice suddenly rang out. "Stop." The man's hand paused and his expression instantly turned ugly. "Young Master Gong, don't forget your responsibility." "She's not that woman," Gong Jun said indifferently. The man was stunned and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment, then looked at Gong Jun. "She's not? Didn't you notice the dark energy lingering around her body?" Gong Jun said coldly. The man then squatted down. After sensing Bailey Hongzhuang's aura, the strong murderous intent in his eyes gradually dissipated, and he revealed a comfortable smile. "She's not. That's great. Since there's nothing else, you should leave. Otherwise, they'll find you when they wake up." Yes. In the blink of an eye, the man's figure quickly disappeared from the spot. Gong Jun quietly looked at Bewitching, unconcealable joy between his brows and the corners of his lips slightly raised. "Master, long time no see." When Bailey Hongzhuang slowly woke up, she saw a familiar handsome face. Bewitching happily said, "Wife, you're awake." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and looked at everything around her. The scene before she fainted gradually surfaced in her mind. "We're still in the cave." Bewitching nodded and gently helped her up. "Earlier, that demon suddenly self-destructed, and we were all seriously injured and unconscious. I've already fed you a pill. How do you feel?" Moving her heavy body, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. "I'm fine as long as I'm not dead. Where's Gong Jun and the rest?" Bewitching pointed not far away. The energy storm from the demon's self-destruction was too strong, and they were all knocked unconscious. Xiao He and Xiao Bai have just regained consciousness, and Gong Jun should be waking up soon as well. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang felt relieved. Only then did she notice that the originally pitch-black environment had suddenly become very bright. She looked up and realized that there was sunlight shining above her head, and she immediately understood. "From the looks of it, we'll be able to leave from the top." "That's right," Bewitching nodded. "As long as we kill this demon, we'll be able to leave this place." "How long have we been unconscious? We really should be quick." Bailey Hongzhuang checked the injuries on her body. The power of this demon's self-destruction was truly terrifying. Fortunately, although they were unconscious, their situation was not as bad as Bai Qingli's. Although there were many wounds on her body, they did not affect her much. After taking the healing pill, her recovery speed was also very fast. "I'll go check on Gong Jun. When he wakes up, we'll leave this place." "Okay." Gong Jun, Bewitching looked at the unconscious Gong Jun. Although this guy was in the periphery, his injuries were also very serious. He reached out and patted Gong Jun's face. "Gong Jun, wake up." Hearing this voice, Gong Jun slowly woke up. There was a trace of confusion on his face. When he saw the face in front of him clearly, he said in surprise, "Boss? It's good that you're awake. We have to prepare to leave this place." Gong Jun immediately came back to his senses, and subconsciously wanted to sit up. The moment he moved, he pulled on his wounds and could not help but wail. Chapter 6640. Everyone fainted when that monster self-destructed. "I've already fed you some pills, but it'll take some time for you to recover. It's getting late, and the monster slaughtering competition is about to end. We have to leave this place quickly. Beichen's expression turned serious. Gong Jun understood as well. He endured the pain and stood up. Yes, yes, yes. Let's go quickly. Even though everyone's injuries had not fully recovered, flying out of the cave was not difficult for them. In the blink of an eye, the three of them were out of the maze. At the same time, Bai Li Yin-che and the rest were puzzled. We haven't seen sister and brother-in-law for so long. Could it be that they're faster than us and have already left? Linga nodded. That's not strange. They're the strongest, so it's natural that they'll pass faster than us. Since we were able to pass, it shouldn't be a problem for them. When Xiren had a casual expression as he said matter-of-factly, "Don't worry. We came here separately to gain experience. They should have already left. There's still a few days before the monster slaughtering competition ends. It's just enough time for us to hurry back." Zhong Limu said. "I've gained a lot in this maze. I wonder what ranking I'll get with these points." Hearing this, when Xiren immediately moved to Zhong Limu's side. "I've gained a lot too. Let's see if you have more points than me." Seeing this, Bai Li Yin-che and the rest looked at the two of them curiously. But in the next moment, they heard Xiren's wail. "That's ridiculous. How can you have so much more points than me? I've clearly compared with Ying. The difference in points between us isn't that big." Zhong Limu smiled. "When I came out, I didn't see any of you, so I went in for a while before coming out." When Xiren stared at Zhong Limu for a moment before shouting, "Beast!" "Haha." Zhong Limu laughed unceremoniously. "Who asked you to be slower than me?" When Xiren moved closer to Emo Yunjua's side. "Yunjua, let me see your points. Calm me down." Emo Yunjua handed the identity card to Xiren with a cold expression. However, after seeing the number on it, Xiren's eyes widened, and he could not help but wail again. "You, how can you have more points than Zhong Limu? Could it be that your speed is faster than his?" "No." Emo Yunjua shook his head. "What's going on?" At this moment, even Di Xiaofeng was curiously looking at Emo Yunjua. In fact, he had always been very clear that although this cold man rarely spoke, his strength had always been extremely strong. "I met a few people when I was passing through the level. After I finished them off, I took their points." Emo Yunjua's voice was calm, as if it was a matter of fact. Xiren's lips twitched. "Yunjua, when you're talking about something so outrageous, can your expression not be so casual? Is this outrageous?" Emo Yunjua's face was calm. "This is very normal." Chapter 6641. When Beichen and the other two walked out of the maze, they found that there was no one nearby. After thinking for a moment, they understood that everyone should have left first. The three of them slowly walked forward. Xiao He and Xiao Bai shrunk their bodies and sat on Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. Their speed was not fast. Along the way, they also paid attention to whether other cultivators would appear. After all, their injuries had not healed yet. If they encountered other cultivators, some trouble would inevitably occur. Fortunately, because the competition was about to end, almost all the cultivators had left. Along the way, they did not encounter anyone. Not only that, but even those monsters had been killed by everyone. So they did not have to worry about these problems. Therefore, although their speed was not fast, it was not much slower than when they came. If that monster was going to die, then so be it. How dare it self-destruct? How abominable! Gong Jun's face was full of resentment. "I've never suffered such serious injuries since I came to Xi'an City. This time it's good." Looking at Gong Jun's indignant look, Bailey Hongzhuang and Beichen smiled faintly and shook their heads. This guy was different from them. They usually went through fire and water, so this kind of situation was normal. Actually, this monster's strength is extraordinary. It's very lucky that its self-destruction only seriously injured us and did not kill us. A trace of doubt flashed across Beichen's brows. Logically speaking, it was a miracle that such a strong monster self-destructed, and they were so close to it. Gong Jun smiled and said, "I think that monster is different from the monsters we've seen before. Although it's strong, the power of its self-destruction is not strong enough. I didn't notice that this monster was planning to self-destruct at all. Its speed is much faster than ours. Hearing this, the doubt between Bewitching's brows gradually dissipated. You're right. This monster is different from the monsters we've seen before. Whether it's the power or speed of its self-destruction, it's different. One who survives a great disaster is destined for good fortune in the future. On the way back, they met some cultivators sporadically. Bailey Hongzhuang kept looking for Zhong Yiluan. However, they didn't see Zhong Yiluan, even as they got closer and closer to the end. I haven't seen Zhong Yiluan for so long. I wonder where he went. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Although she didn't know what ranking they would achieve with their points. With their points and Zhong Yiluan's points, it wouldn't be a problem to enter the top 10. Furthermore, as long as Bai Luchuan didn't have these points, his ranking would definitely drop greatly. This guy wouldn't go back on his word, right? Gong Jun said worriedly. This fellow is a person who cherishes his life. Even if he's working for Bai Luchuan, he wouldn't be willing to lose his life. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head, her expression still showing a trace of confidence. Unless Shiyun City has a person with superb medical skills, he has no other choice. In my opinion, he should have already met up with Bai Luchuan. I'm afraid we won't be able to see him until we reach the end. Bewitching revealed a pondering look. We'll see what happens when the time comes. He should think of a way to approach us. Chapter 6642. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching were deep in thought, Bai Luchuan was also anxiously searching for Zhong Yiluan. Where did Zhong Yiluan run off to? The demon-slaying competition is about to end, but this fellow is still nowhere to be seen. Bai Luchuan was flustered and exasperated. It wasn't easy for Bai Qingli to give up on the competition. It was a good opportunity for him to show off. Although he couldn't take advantage of this opportunity to kill Bai Qingli, as long as he could show his prowess and overshadow his limelight, it would be excellent. Young master, we have already sent people to search everywhere. However, in the later stages of the competition, Zhong Yiluan suddenly disappeared for some reason. My points are still only 5th place. What the hell are the 4 numbers on the ranking list? Bai Luchuan looked at the top 4 names on the ranking list. They were all numbers. Such a situation had never happened since the demon-slaying competition was held. Now, almost everyone was discussing who the owner of the number was. He was really puzzled. Why would these fellows use numbered identity cards for no reason? Most importantly, when he thought of the numbered identity card, he couldn't help but think of Bewitching and company. These fellows were forced to use their identity cards because of his obstruction. Now that such a situation had happened, could it be related to them? Brother Bai, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching both used numbered identity cards. I wonder if they are among the 4? Yun Xiaoman also had a bad premonition. These 2 fellows had been extraordinary from the moment they appeared. If they really obtained 1st place this time, wouldn't that be terrible? Bai Luchuan's expression immediately darkened. He turned to look at the man beside him. Do you know their numbers? Young master, every year, the numbered identity cards are randomly distributed. Any cultivator can receive them, so they don't pay attention to this aspect. Furthermore, according to the memories of the person who issued the numbers, he has never seen Bewitching and Bai Qingli. Unlucky. Bai Luchuan cursed. A bunch of trash. Looking at Bai Luchuan's cursing appearance, Yun Xiaoman couldn't help but comfort him. Brother Bai, in my opinion, this might not be them. Look, 4 out of the top 5 are serial numbers. Maybe it has nothing to do with them. I hope so. When Mo Yunjue and the others arrived, they discovered that many cultivators had already gathered there. However, there were still many cultivators nearby who were still fighting monsters for some points. This year's monster slaying competition is truly the most peculiar one. The top 4 are actually all numbered identity cards. Do you guys think they're ruthless people from other cities? I think this should be the most likely scenario. Our Cloud City's strength is a bit inferior compared to the other cities. Once the cultivators from the other cities came, it wouldn't be strange for them to obtain such results. If that's really the case, then wouldn't our Shiyun City be a bit embarrassed? If it wasn't for Bai Qingli being hunted down and giving up on the competition, the first place would still be his. Everyone sighed. Bai Qingli was the undisputed number one in their hearts. Even if they couldn't get it, they didn't want it to fall into the hands of people from other cities. Chapter 66-43. A look of anticipation appeared on Zhongli Mu's face. Let's go and take a look. Before they came, they had already compared their scores. Among them, he and Yunju had the highest points. However, they didn't know about the past results of the demon slaughter competition, so they couldn't use this to determine their ranking. Di Xiaofeng and the others also quickened their pace. When they saw the rankings, a smile appeared on their faces. As expected, you guys are third and fourth. Di Xiaofeng's face didn't have the slightest bit of surprise because above Mo Yunjue and Zhongli Mu's rankings were Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang. I remember that Beichen's points weren't much higher than ours back then. Xiren looked thoughtful. Could it be that Beichen is the same as you guys and robbed others in the maze? Mo Yunjue looked at the difference in points above, and a complicated look flashed in his eyes. If that's the case, then Beichen and Hongzhuang must have robbed a group of people. The corner of Xiren's mouth twitched slightly. Thinking about the difference in points, it was indeed not the difference of one or two people. These two guys are really abnormal. I didn't meet anyone else along the way in the maze. Me too. Zhang Guaniying nodded. But I think even if we met, the ones in danger would still be us, right? Look, that Bai Luchuan is fifth. Although you didn't chase this guy out of the top 10, it's still not bad. Xiao Xuanzi smiled. This annoying guy actually wanted to kill his master. Now that he had such a result, he must be very depressed. While everyone was discussing, Bailey Yanche began to search the vicinity. Why haven't I seen elder sister and brother-in-law yet? Hearing this, everyone came back to their senses from the rankings and started to search the surroundings. However, as the crowd circled around the area, they did not see Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Mingya. Their faces were filled with doubt. Beichen and the others won't be slower than us, right? Xiren pondered. Not necessarily, Di Xiaofeng said. Maybe they rushed out of the labyrinth too quickly, so they went back again. That way, they'll be behind us. Listening to Di Xiaofeng's perverted explanation, Xiren didn't know what to say. This kind of thing. You don't have to be so willful, do you? You think it's impossible? Di Xiaofeng asked. Xiren stared at Di Xiaofeng for a second. No, I think it's very possible. Isn't that right? Emperor Xiaofeng smiled faintly. This also explains why their points are so much higher. Haha. When Xiren laughed. I still believe that they robbed others. Alright, I think so too. Everyone looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Bai Luchuan had been looking for Zhong Yiluan. Suddenly, he saw those familiar figures in front of him, and his face became gloomy. Big brother Yin, aren't they Di Beichen's helpers? Yun Xiaoman also noticed the appearance of this group of people. In fact, from the moment these guys appeared, many people had already started discussing them. Chapter 66-44. Why did they appear, but I didn't see Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang? Yun Xiaoman's gaze searched her surroundings. When she thought of these two fellows, she couldn't help but feel a strong sense of unwillingness in her heart. They really didn't appear. Bai Luchuan frowned slightly and suddenly chuckled. These two fellows like to cause trouble so much. They might have already died at someone's hands. Hearing this, Yin Xiaoman couldn't help but laugh. Brother Bai, what you said isn't impossible. If that's the case, then that's great. Bai Luchuan only glanced at them before shifting his gaze. He wasn't in the mood to argue with these fellows. He only wanted to find Zhong Yiluan as soon as possible. The demon slaughter competition was about to end. If he still couldn't find Zhong Yiluan, then his name would stop at 5th place. Not to mention being in the limelight. Even if he were to compare a few times, his results would be much worse. Bai Qingli giving up on the competition because of the assassination could be considered a dignified reason. However, if he were to obtain such results after participating, then the one who would be truly embarrassed would be him. Fuck. While Bai Luchuan sent people to search everywhere, Zhong Yiluan's mood was extremely complicated. He kept looking around, hoping that the two figures would appear soon. If they didn't appear, then he would inevitably be caught. Great Aunt, hurry up and show up. Zhong Yiluan hid to the side. The anxiety on his face was obvious. Back then, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bai Luchuan had only agreed on the exchange of points. As for where the exchange would take place, they didn't say anything. Now the competition was about to end, but he couldn't find the two of them. Wasn't this asking for his life? He had spent a tremendous amount of effort to secretly frame someone else, but if he couldn't get the antidote, then it would be completely over. Gong Jun, in your opinion, where would Zhong Yiluan be waiting for us? As they got closer and closer to the rankings, Di Beichen's voice sounded. Gong Jun paused for a moment as he recalled the scene near the rankings. Suddenly, a thought surfaced in his mind. Boss, if it were me, I would definitely choose to wait over there. Gong Jun pointed to a spot not too far away. That place is rather secluded, so most people won't pay too much attention to it. However, the field of vision is also quite wide. If anything happens, there are many ways to escape. Then let's go to the place you mentioned. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen in surprise. Do you think Zhong Yiluan will be there? Gong Jun is an expert, so he must be very good at this. As for Zhong Yiluan, he's different from us. He's already participated in the monster slaying competition several times, so he's definitely very familiar with the surrounding terrain. If he is waiting for us, he will definitely find a suitable place to hide. Di Beichen's lips curled into a faint smile. If he isn't around when we go this time, then forget it. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay. Boss, do you really trust my judgment that much? Along the way, even Gong Jun did not believe in himself. If it were you, you would choose that place, right? If it were me, I would definitely choose that place. Then it can't be wrong. Di Beichen said casually. No need to think too much. We'll know when we get there. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.